Because true love allows you to take your own path, even if it leads to brokenness. In other words, I know where you want to go ain't good for you, but because you want to go, I'll let you go, because sometimes I got to let you go so you'll come back. And you go from praying every day to only praying when you need to make it through the day. When is the last time you wanted God the way you wanted water? We've settled for distance without intimacy. We live in this new society where y'all just trying to treat God like the dude who paid the rent. You deal with him when you need something. Translation, your biggest sin and your biggest issue is who you are sharing your life with that doesn't deserve it. You have started to believe what the enemy has said about you, and then you found a crowd to match your image. Bible says he went out to a far country, spent his money on riotous living. He was in the hog pen eating with the hogs, and then the Bible says he came to himself. And he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to eat and I have none? There was a famine in the land. And he went back to his father, and the Bible says his father ran to him with open arms and says, my son once was lost, but he's now found. He once was blind, and now he sees. I want to talk on this subject because this is where most of us are with God, a long distance relationship. I found out recently that 50% of the people in relationship today met the person that they're in relationship with online. You can supplement FaceTime and direct messages, real-time instant chats. You got all this kind of stuff that you can do to be in a relationship. Mid-20th century, you had to be a neighbor of somebody. There wasn't no internet, so you had to be a neighbor of somebody, or somebody had to introduce you to somebody, or it was a coworker. Now somebody in Miami can be dating somebody in Florida. We've settled for distance without intimacy. We now have learned how to get along with people from a distance. They say 28 million people in relationships in America say that their relationship is long distance. We've settled for and we've become comfortable with, and we can actually thrive despite proximity. Familiarity breeds contempt, which means that the closer you are to a thing, the more familiar you become with the thing. Because familiarity breeds contempt. It's like going to a church. When you first go there, you're on fire for God. Sometimes you can fall off because you get familiar. It's like we don't understand that honor shouldn't disappear because familiarity comes in the room. It's the reason why most relationships suffer, is because we have to do a thing to keep a person that we did to get a person, but we work hard to get them, and then we start slacking off on keeping them. It's hard to love somebody when you know them real close. It's hard to stay respectful of somebody when you know who they are. And that's what I love about God. There is nobody in the world who knows us more intimately than him, and yet he still finds a way to look beyond our faults and see. Anybody want to thank God that he loves us in spite of ourselves? I am afraid that the same way we are psychologically, emotionally about cars and houses and people, we've taken that same psychology to God. You've been knowing God since you were 6. You've been in church your whole life, and you were on fire at one point. And you go from praying every day to only praying when you need to make it through the day. You go from fasting to talking about, I don't know about that. We become familiar with God, and just like we do people, we back off of God. And the whole of most of our relationships is we think that we're in a close relationship with God because we saw a post on somebody's page and we posted it on ours talking about me and God like that. That's a post. That ain't real life. God don't got an Instagram account. God got a hotline to your heart. What have you said to him? When have you prayed to him? When is the last time you wanted God the way you wanted water? Because God is the reason why I'm here, and I'm not going to get here and ignore the person who brought me here. I need thee every hour. Anybody still need him? Now I'm going to have to preach this thing because we live in this new society where y'all just trying to treat God like the dude who paid the rent. You deal with him when you need something. You treat God like the girl you need to come over when you're lonely, but you got to treat God like he's the main thing. I need you when I don't know I need you. I need you more than the people around me. I need you more than these kids. I want them, but I ain't got to have them. I need you more than my spouse. Anybody need God more than anything? Where is the hunger for God? Not for stuff. But for God, where is the church that tarried until he came? I grew up in a church where we would just wait on him to come, and it didn't matter if church lasted 2 hours, 3 hours, or 4 hours. We wasn't leaving until we had a move. Talk to me, somebody. All you will know is when you got done with God, you'll know you had an encounter with him. I'm talking need him, not tolerate him, not want him, need him. Because under my own strength, I'm going to fail me and you. There's no such thing as a good person without him. The only thing that makes any of us worth anything is that he lives in us. If he moves out the house, you can condemn the house. Do you respect what I'm saying? You need him. Being pretty ain't enough in this next season. I'm telling y'all, I want you to hear me, young people. It might work for a little bit, but the grass withers and the flowers fade. And there's going to come a time where you're only going to be beautiful to people who love you. And don't wait until the beauty fades to all of a sudden be on fire for the Lord. They used to say you better do it while the blood is still running warm. In the time that the text was written, it was written to a different societal construct than ours. They lived in a guilt and innocence construct. We live in a shame construct. Everything that we want society to do, we shame folks into doing. We live in a shame culture. So when we read Luke 15, we read it differently because this boy ought to be ashamed of himself. His daddy gave him all that stuff, talking about, Lord, give me my inheritance, daddy. I want my money. This boy said, I want my inheritance. I want to live like you're dead. The amazing thing about the father is he gave it to him. Because true love allows you to take your own path, even if it leads to brokenness. See, this is God in action. This is actually an allegory showing us that God turns us over to a reprobate mind. In other words, I know where you want to go ain't good for you, but because you want to go, I'll let you go, because sometimes I got to let you go so you'll come back. He had to know my mama. My little sister Keion called herself one day, we're going to run away from the house. I'll never forget. We lived on Alexander Avenue. She said she was running away, and me and my sister Danielle, and they're like, oh, she going to run away. The girl ran away. She went to her friend's house. Me and my sister Danielle spent the whole day like, is mama even going to go look for the child? Mama knew exactly where she was. The girl mama called my mama and said, Keion over here. Mama said, I know, but she can stay over there till she find out that she got to follow these rules, because those rules over there don't work at this house. See, sometimes you got to let a person go. And what Keion found out is just because there was no rules over there doesn't mean there was love over there. Because those whom he loves, he also chastens. And she is the woman she is today because of the love, not the lack of rules. That's what's wrong with most of us. We don't know the difference between love and liberty. Sometimes love says you know it ain't right and you need to get it right. Love is sometimes the absence of guidance. It gives you guidelines. Genesis chapter 2. Here's the guidelines. You can eat from any tree in the garden, but the tree in the middle of the knowledge of good and evil, do not touch it. Guidelines. But when it came time to guide them, he let them do what they wanted to do. Eve and Adam literally ate themselves out of house and home. And God says, I won't make you obey my will, but I will see if you will give yourself a will alignment. I'm not talking about W-H-E-E-L. I'm talking about W-I-L-L. You got to get your will in alignment with his. I personally believe, and I believe this emphatically, that the prodigal son did make a mistake by asking for his portion of his inheritance. I absolutely believe it was disrespectful. And the father, by Jewish law, had a right to stone his son to death as a result of that request. The real issue is not necessarily that he moved, but it's where he moved and who he moved with. That he actually moved into Gentile land. And his biggest sin was that he shared his Jewish wealth with Gentile people. Translation, your biggest sin and your biggest issue is who you are sharing your life with that doesn't deserve it. You have started to believe what the enemy has said about you, and then you found a crowd to match your image. C. Brooks says in his book, From Strength to Strength, he says that most people are trying to develop their resume attributes when they should be living to demonstrate their eulogy attributes. I was there for you and I was on time, and when nobody else was there, I was there. That's resume stuff. But eulogy stuff says I could trust him. Eulogy stuff is I told him a secret and I ain't never heard it again. Eulogy stuff is I was in sin. They took me to God, but they didn't take me to Twitter. Who's building a eulogy and not a resume?